It's another Manly Monday, and this Manly Monday, as promised on Friday, I'm talking about the I Can Fix Her Girl and why shows like Gen V are showing why being around women like this can get you in a lot of trouble. And this is going to be aimed at men, but I Can Fix Her Girls are, as they show in Gen V, not only dangerous to the men in their lives, but also the women in their lives. But there's a social dynamic that particularly gets their hooks into men on this one. And I want to try to do the um uh how to spot an I Can Fix a girl from just somebody who's legitimately going through a bad time and could use some support. Um so hopefully this will be helpful and not a shit show. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LanaK, or buy a one-time Lana Care session for somebody you use but can't afford it. Coffee.com/LanaK, or GoFundMe for the men's groups. Invites for the Discord. Anybody who signs up and does this stuff will get a Discord link as part of one of those services on like November 5th. That's when the cards process. So yeah, getting into it. You don't fix people because people are not broken machines. People are not broken toys. People are people. We do not. Thinking you can fix someone is a process called instrumentality, which is a marker of objectification. There is a lot of people grew up in families where they had the example of well-meaning people trying to save people from themselves. And I first got my thinking rearranged in this regard working with recovering addicts. And there's a principle called independent living principles, which are you have to make sure that you are not insisting the vulnerable person does what you want them to do. You want to support them in figuring out what they want to do and help them make the choices that will get there. And your support is not conditional upon them doing what you want them to do, provided healthy boundaries are set. And this is very, very complicated. And you can't do this for another person until you get right with your own boundaries. And that's getting right with your own boundaries is like 75% of the work here. But you get a character, and I'm going to be very, very brief on this stuff because I eventually want to do a full-length video on why I increasingly believe that my take on Starlight from The Boys is the one the show intends. Because Starlight is the only person who has really successfully taken Homelander down a peg. Albeit possibly temporarily. Don't count that dude out. He's a narcissist. The thing about narcissists is the only people that actually can go toe to toe with a narcissist is another narcissist. They bleed people with actual empathy dry. And that's where people go, oh, Starlight can't help it. She can't help it. She had all these bad things as a kid. Well, okay. A lot of people have bad things happen to them as a kid and don't decide as an adult to manipulate men into acting against their own best interests and, doing things that are dangerous and or not good for them. And then the minute, stick a pin in that. But Starlight's mother was definitely a narcissist. She was a toxic stage mom. And when you are raised by a narcissist, you pick up some of those habits as normal. And it is this de-indoctrination process of turning off the instincts to never say what you mean because somebody might get mad at you, and manipulating the people around you so that they can never be mad at you because nothing is ever your fault, because you don't actually make decisions. And the thing about Starlight that people have to keep in mind is she could have walked away at any point, and she chose not to. The thing with characters like Starlight, the thing with characters like Marie in Gen V, is it is this descent into a series of choices that make them complicit in an incredibly damaging, toxic, dishonest world. And then you get into Starlight and Huey, and the arc where Huey felt so unmanned, so unworthy of being with Starlight. She was so much better than him that he injects himself with a very dangerous chemical to give himself superpowers. And that metaphor strikes home because I think we can all see why he did that. But a relationship shouldn't make you feel inferior. And part of the reason it did is Starlight is constantly giving off, oh, I just wish someone could save me from all of this thing. And he doesn't feel strong enough. He doesn't feel capable of saving her. And that's when you ask, she is incredibly physically powerful. She's clearly not stupid. She knows how to play the game. Why can't she save her fucking self? Because she's a girl. And because she's pretty. And one thing you learn when you're a woman is there are certain women who know how to leverage that, and they will get away with shit that no other kind of woman will. Now, it doesn't help them in the long run. And that's the thing that's very important to realize. I knew a lot of girls like Starlight when I worked in TV. And you probably see a lot of like social media influencers that are a lot like Starlight. And there's always some story about, eventually it comes up they're being used by an abusive dirtbag, and that tends to be how it goes. Sometimes it is that simple. Sometimes it's mutual abuse. And you want to just avoid that whole thing completely, because being with a girl like that, you're going to end up like Huey. You're never going to feel enough. You're going to feel inadequate because she's asking you for something you can't do. You cannot consistently save another human being from her own choices. And it is amazing how many people try. I've been having a situation in my own life where somebody has been trying to run intermediary and get me to say a third party's past behavior was okay, so she can only reach out to me when it's totally safe and there's no risk to her whatsoever. And I refused to do it because I did that multiple times before with them, and they just got with another guy who screwed over everyone involved, and we were right back in the same place. And I'm like, no more. It's enabling behavior. It's allowing someone to not grow up. And it is actually extremely ego driven. This is why I say be the hero of your own story and not anyone else's. In the real world, if someone does not feel like the protagonist of their own story, it has catastrophic effects on their mental health. I remember a time where I felt like a supporting character in my own life, that everything revolved around meeting other people's needs and doing things for other people and putting them first and always sacrificing for them. And I thought that eventually people were going to appreciate that. And then it was going to be my turn. And then they were going to support me. And no, 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 that's not how it works. When you are the person who is always the one running to the rescue when they fuck up, they start to expect it. And they start to rely on it. And so they don't learn to stop fucking up. Because why do they have to? You come, you save them, and then if you do anything wrong in the way you handle that, they just get mad at you and say how you ruined everything and how awful it is for you. I mean, look at Starlight and Huey. She got mad at him for doing things that she was doing to him as well. He just didn't know it when she got mad at him. Totally unaccountable. Totally unaccountable for the fact that she was just as bad as he was in terms of using their relationship for somewhat manipulative purposes. That is a huge red flag. Because if you're doing it as well, you should have more sympathy for why the person did it and not treat it as an unpardonable sin. Because what does that say about your behavior? So let's move on to Shadowheart from Baldur's Gate 3 as an example too, because she is actually less nuanced. Starlight, I just get red flags about, but we haven't seen Starlight quite go full mask off yet. This is just the sense I get. But Shadowheart and Lae'zel in Baldur's Gate 3 have very similar quest arcs in that they're both, and I'm going to avoid plot spoilers. These are overarching themes of the arc, okay? Because there are some choices. It's possible to just break half of Act 2 through Shadowheart's quest line. I did it and rolled back to play the game properly because I missed all the Moonrise Tower content because I just went, oh, here's this crypt. I'm going to see where it goes. Okay, puzzles. Oh, shit. Shadowheart's story is literally about stopping her from screwing over a more self-actualized, more talented other woman. And the idea that you sit there and just make choices for her because she is so fucked up that she doesn't remember massive parts of her past, and yet she's not thinking, hey, maybe there's a reason I don't remember massive parts of my past. And why is, if she is such a devotee of Shar, why the hell does she care what you think about the choices she makes on a religious pilgrimage? It's a video game. We don't think too hard about this stuff because we're used to making choices for party characters in RPGs. It's a thing about the format. The thing about Baldur's Gate 3 is that the correct answer for Astarion a lot of the times is don't make him do shit he doesn't want to do. And the developers have said they don't want him to just be the trauma character. And he's not. But the fact that you have one character who only likes you if you, well, act like a jerk in places. It's the moral philosophy of earning approval from Astarion is very interesting in the game. And it feels like a new idea in choice mechanics, which is very exciting, which is what makes the Shadowheart stuff so very frustrating. Because she can't help it. All right. She has all these things. You have to save her from her own terrible choices. At no point is there a rebuilding arc in the same way that Astarion has to figure out how to navigate non-toxic relationships, including friendships. Lae'zel has to figure out how to navigate the fact that, you know, she killed people believing that it was just. And then she found out, no, she'd been lied to. She was being used. And most of her quest is the aftermath of that. They get to the whole twist very, very quickly, the whole betrayal very quickly. And then the bulk of her story is, now what? Shadowheart, you literally plunge into the depths of helping her pull bullshit. And, like, there's these quests she's supposed to take to be a priestess of Shard. You can get other people to do it for her. In fact, there's one that requires rogue skills that she doesn't have. So you have to get Astarion to do the fucking stealth shit so that she can pass her Justiciar trial? But that's what those girls do. She's actually a really good character if you treat her like a villain. As a sympathetic character, she's toxic as anything. And the place I think that they stumbled, and this is why, you know, having a particular female experience in a writer's room is really, really important. That, all right, you've saved Shadowheart from all the lies and all her terrible choices and the big, bad, scary people. And then everything's okay. And she's shiny and everything's wonderful. But it's not. And because other characters' stories are so Act 3 heavy, they skimp on the rebuilding process a person has to do. And the problem is that people like Shadowheart are stuck at an emotional maturity level of somewhere between 13 and 16 years old. And ideally, they learn to adult. Because what happens between the ages of 13 and 16 years old is you start individuating. You start self-actualizing. You're not basing your choices just on whether certain people approve of what you do. You're basing your choices on, does this feel right to me? Does this represent who I am? Is this me or is this not me? And when people are constantly overriding you and making choices for you and going, you don't know how to make these choices, I have to save you from yourself, you never learn how to make the tough calls. And you stay in an adolescent mindset, a literal, like, emotional maturity level of an early adolescent. And that is where Shadowheart actually is. Now think about all the terrible things girls did to you in middle school and early high school. Right. That's the problem. If somebody doesn't know who they are, if somebody can't make their own choices, they are going to get the people around them hurt again and again and again and again. Because they have no restraint, they have no impulse control, they can't handle anything being their fault because did a bad thing equals am a bad person. And they're not a bad person, they're a good person. Because bad people are bad people. So it's always someone else's fault. And if you're the one swooping in to save that person, it's going to be your fault. And you're going to believe that it was your fault because you know you were the one that made the choice. You tried to save them from themselves. You tried to make them be happy. You tried to give them a better life and they're still upset. You're a failure. It's all your fault. And once that dynamic kicks in, there is absolutely no reason that mental and emotional 13-year-old isn't going to keep blaming you for everything. And now you have a breeding ground for coercive control. It isn't violent. There aren't threats against you physically, but everything's your fault. Everything's your fault because she makes no choices. She can't make choices. She doesn't know how to make choices. You did this to her. You made her. You made her. She just did what you told her because she needed your help and you didn't. See what I mean? A lot of people are probably going, yeah, because it feels so familiar. You need a partner who owns their choices. And that means you need a partner who's going to make choices. And people like Starlight. Starfire's a DC character. People like Starlight. People like Shadowheart. They find a way to insist. They had to. Somebody made them. They had no choice. Yes, they did. Yes, they did. They just didn't want to make that choice. And it is easy. It is safe to never make choices, to wait around for somebody to make the decision for you. It doesn't feel good. They constantly need more and more attention, more and more external validation. So they can't internally validate. They need people giving them gifts and telling them they're pretty. And if this starts sounding like hell, yeah, these people aren't very happy. And then, their looks start to fade and then they go batshit bonkers because that's all they had. And now all of a sudden, people aren't being blinded by their bullshit anymore because they're not that classical trophy girl appearance. And they need that for this whole shtick to work. Some manage to keep it going well into their 50s, and then it's like, oh, he left me. When a guy's finally like, I can't do this anymore. I'm out of here. He left me. He abandoned me. Nothing's ever their responsibility, meaning everything is always going to be your fault. And that is an abuse dynamic. She is responsible for her. You are responsible for you. Period. End of story. No exceptions. You can't make another person's life choices for them because they're choosing to let you make the choice. And if they're not, well, then you're coercing them. Which, let's face it, you're not. You're doing what the pattern is. You're doing what you know is expected of you in that relationship. And it feels good at first because of all the crap we've been fed in fairy tales. But it's not healthy. And it's not good for anyone. All right. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/LeannaK. Or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it. Coffee.com/LeannaK. Or GoFundMe. I just lost my train of thought completely. But thanks for watching Manly Mondays.